Going on, guys? How's it going? Today we're doing the Dynasty takes that you're too afraid to say out loud. We're gonna start off with Jaden first. Go ahead.
All right, so my dynasty take that I'm way too afraid to say out loud right now. I might get a lot of slack from it, but honestly, second round picks are just a complete scam. I know everybody around thinks that, they're great pieces. They're great pieces to have. You're going to get a hit eventually, things like that. Like I know in our league, for example, there's a guy who, he just gathers those second round picks. He's a rebuilder, but we've seen he's been rebuilding for like 4 years now. So that's where second round picks get you. What you really want to aim for is those first round picks. So what I'm going to recommend you do is trade them away for any chance you get to get either a tier up for a first, like for example multiple seconds for a first, even a late first, I don't care. Usually like 9 times out of 10 they hit more often than seconds. Or for a proven player, for example just someone who's valued as a early second, mid second, whatever, I would take those proven players because the odds that you're gonna get a player that's that proven, for example guys like Chris Godwin, the odds that you're gonna get a player like Chris Godwin there probably slim to none, like unless you get just one of those outlier hits like an A-chain George Pickens or something, which is very unlikely because hits for second rounders in a 12-team league since 2021. I did the research here. In 2025, we had maybe 3, Loveland, Scatabo, Jackson Dart, maybe Luther Burden. I know him and Loveland were going sometimes in the first round, the end of the first round. And then in many leagues, obviously those guys were first round picks. So that is kind of skewed there. In 2024, we had only 1. Maybe you could argue 2 in, Blake Corum, Michael Penix, which I would argue are probably not hits, to be fair.
Yeah.
Ricky Pearsall, I would consider him probably like kind of a hit just because, he's produced a bit in fantasy. 2023, we only had 3 hits in Devon A-Chain, Sam Laporta, Rashee Rice. And even then, Rashee Rice was going in the 3rd round in some cases, even Sam Laporta there. And then in 2022, you had only 2 hits, and one of them was going in the 1st round most of the time in George Pickens, and then in Alec Pierce, which you could maybe consider a hit just because, he wasn't that great in the first 2 years in fantasy. He kind of broke out this year, and I feel like he might sign with a great team. He might re-sign with the Colts. Nobody knows who the quarterback's going to be for Alec Pierce in the future, and he's one of those guys that's very quarterback dependent because he needs a guy that can get him the deep ball consistently. And then in 2021, we only had 2. We had Nico Collins, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Those guys were also going in the 3rd round in some cases in a 12-team league. So obviously those guys are superstars now. So that was a really good kind of late round draft. But with that being said, yes, I'm not saying that you're guaranteed to draft a bust in the 2nd round. Obviously there are those hits here and there, but it's only an 18 to 22% hit rate. Whereas if you look at 1st round picks, it's crazy. Like 2025, 9 out of 12 were hits or fantasy starters. 2024, you had 10 out of 12. 2023, you had 6 out of 12, which was kind of a outlier bad year. In 2022, you had 8 out of 12, and then 2021, 7 out of 12 were hits. So that's 40 out of 60 players drafted in the 1st round of dynasty drafts since 2021 have been starting or like superstar contributors for your dynasty team. That's a 66.7% hit rate. So kind of my instructions here would be, don't rely on 2nd round picks. If you're a rebuilder especially, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to stack up on 1st round picks, take those 2nd round picks, trade them for either proven players or for 1st round picks. Just with the 66.7% hit rate compared to the 18 to 22% hit rate, you can't go wrong there. Even a late first is much more likely to hit than an early second. So that's what I gotta say there.
Absolutely. So next up we got my pick, which is always take the star over the pick or prospect. Got a couple of horror stories to tell. I was actually offered Jamar Chase and what was projected to be between the 101 and the 103 early in the year, and Jaden Reed. So it was Jaden Reed and the high pick for Jamar. I turned it down. I thought that pick had chance of being Ashton Genty 101. It ended up being the 103. In hindsight, it ended up being Tet McMillan and Jaden Reed for Jamar Chase. I think we would all take that swap. Love Tet McMillan, super happy with the pick, but Jamar Chase just had that superstar ceiling, and when Burrow's healthy, like he's definitely wide receiver 1 talks all always no lower than 3. He's a top 5 dynasty asset, no question. To get a franchise cornerstone like that would have been absolutely huge, and it wasn't worth the potential. Even in hindsight, you probably take the Genty swap, given how things have gone for Jaden Reed, especially with the collarbone injury and all those weapons in Green Bay. They're even looking to add to that as well. So definitely take the proven star over that. I also had the 102 that year and was offered JSM for Travis Hunter. A lot of people in my league love Travis Hunter. Unfortunately, I was one of those people. I stand by the Travis, so I declined that trade. Stupidly, unbelievably declined the trade for the wide receiver 1 for Travis Hunter. What you got to remember at the time is he won Blindikoff. Everyone was loving him, and the hype was crazy. I love Travis Hunter still. I still stand by the fact that the talent is there. 101 yards and a touchdown his last game. The thing that I think always needs to be remembered is situation and coaching is so huge, and only like truly special players can overcome that. Like we saw with Malik Neighbors in his rookie year, like only true dynasty superstars can overcome that. And even so, like draft picks and stuff like that are always an injury away from being slid down the depth chart. We see how like Arizona even started treating Marvin Harrison Jr. this year, and they started giving more targets to Michael Wilson, and that was a top 5 draft pick less than 2 years ago, right? When that guy has the big contract, when he has the pedigree, when there's fan pressure to throw him the ball, we saw the difference between the fan pressure to get the ball to AJ Brown and the fan pressure to get the ball to Travis Hunter. It was both there, but the need from the organization, from the fan base, from the coaching staff to get this person the ball, always going to go to the proven star over the young gun. So many variables that can go on with the rookie, like we've seen with a guy like Travis Hunter, like we've seen with even Devontae Smith. The guy won the Heisman, was one of the most exciting wide receiver prospects in the past 5-10 years. And he has largely been a good but not great player at the NFL level. I'm sure a lot of people picked him top 3 in rookie drafts and are largely disappointed, and it's mostly due to his usage. So once you've seen a guy has a system built around him, has a coaching staff that really believes in him, people underestimate how important that is. Know your offensive coordinators. Super important for success. Always take the proven star. A lot of things can go wrong with rookies. Travis Hunter is a great example of that.
I definitely agree there. I know that those trades are definitely, in hindsight, looking pretty bad, but I mean, you can still argue on maybe the Ted McMillan one, Jaden Reed, but at that time of the trade, Jamar Chase was, I believe Burrow was out for the season at that point or something.
Yep.
Jaden Reed was like going on a tear, and everyone thought this guy was going to be like a top 15 type of receiver, and obviously
he was worth a mid to late first at that point.
Yeah, obviously he had that chemistry with Jordan Love, and then for some reason Green Bay just stopped throwing him the ball the second half of that year. So it made sense, like if you wanted to keep Jaden Reed there, but like in hindsight, obviously it's a bad deal. That's why you see the name Jamar Chase, you get offered a superstar of that caliber, as long as you're not like giving like your entire team, most likely, as we know from kind of every trade, essentially it's like usually the guy getting the best player in the deal wins. So I feel like that kind of applies here as well, for sure.
I feel like people get a little too attached to picks and stuff while rebuilding. I was a heavy rebuilder, which made me kind of shy to buy on players like that right away, but proven assets always better than the picks. Absolutely.
Yeah, and like Jamar Chase is worth like what, 3-4 first round picks now. Ted's probably worth
a lot more than Ted McMillan.
Yeah, Ted's probably worth like one early to mid first, and then Jaden Reed's probably worth like a late second at this point, like mid second. So always take the elite guy. All right, so my second take is to never have 2 elite quarterbacks at the same time. So that's your quarterback 1 and your quarterback 2 being elite players. It's never a good idea, in my opinion, from my valuable experience as well in Dynasty. Every time I've specifically had 2 elite quarterbacks, it really handicaps the rest of my roster, whether it's at wide receiver, running back, tight end, picks. It hurts some part of my roster, and it really leaves a hole at that point. And I'd much rather have those, right? I'd rather have those wide receivers, flexes, like running backs that'll give me valuable points, rather than another elite quarterback that maybe is gonna give me like 5 more points per game than like someone like Dak or, you know, Mayfield or Goff or those types of guys, than like having like a Lamar Jackson or something. Like, use that capital that you would be trading for that elite quarterback too, like Lamar Jackson, to invest in those flex receivers and running backs if you're contending, especially if you're contending, rather than a quarterback 2, because obviously those guys, those quarterback 2s like Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield, Brock Purdy, they're perfect for that spot. Like, they still put up like 18, 19, sometimes even more than 20 points per game. They're more than good enough to win you a fantasy championship. I've seen numerous times. So having an elite quarterback 1 is still really good. Like, obviously that's a good kind of guy to build around, that elite quarterback 1, but in a super flex quarterbacks league or a quarterback 2 league, don't get cute and have 2 elite quarterbacks. I've seen it really hampers the rest of the roster.
Yeah, absolutely on that one. I remember, I think you later in the year had a chance to trade for James Cook, who would have been a huge add to your playoff roster, and went for Lamar and got that second huge quarterback, and it ended up being a huge detriment. But we know Lamar was injured and stuff like that, but always know like the 2 quarterback strategy, if you diversify your roster a lot more, would be much more beneficial for you.
It was definitely a kind of a case of like, I should have gone for James Cook, obviously, because he would have cost me like a first, a second, a third, and like a low-end player. It's an elite running back 1 for that season. Like, he probably would have won me the fantasy championship. And then Lamar Jackson, I had Brock Purdy at the time. Traded Brock Purdy, Cam Scatabo, 28 first, second, and Torrey Horton. Like, it was like ridiculous, but all the peer pressure got to me. Everyone was saying Lamar Jackson's gonna be like averaging almost 30 points per game, like in that fantasy stretch, because his schedule was beautiful. It was like the easiest fantasy schedule in the playoffs of any quarterback, and I was like, okay, Lamar, he's probably like hampered right now with the leg, but in a few games he's gonna be healthier. We didn't see that. It really ended badly for me. I lost in the semifinals, but you learn from it, right? You learn from dynasty mistakes like that. That's why I want to make sure that you guys don't do the same thing I did. That's why that's definitely one of my number 1 dynasty takes for sure.
My next take that I'm too afraid to say aloud, but I'm saying it, is that wide receivers are coming back. I absolutely think wide receivers are coming back. I think we've seen a shift to the running game in recent years. I think that's largely a result of these young offensive coaches coming in and changing the game. You see the McVay coaching tree, McVay, LaFleur, Liam Cohen, guys like Mike McDaniel, guys like Cliff Kingsbury, guys with these explosive passing offenses, these deep crossing concepts that have really been opening up the modern passing game, really shifted to a passing offense and a passing game in the NFL. I think people resulted in drafting lighter linebackers, lighter defensive tackles, lighter defensive ends. The shift became much less on stopping the run, and it was, we need to get after the quarterback and we need to be able to cover on the back end. How many times have you heard we just need to get those 2 edges and a shutdown corner, and that's our defense. That's why teams started shifting back to the rushing attack. Teams were attacking those lighter linebackers, those lighter DTs. Offensive line play also deteriorated across the National Football League. So those teams that had those elite lines started abusing them, and that's why the phrase trenches win games, and a new regime comes in, they immediately invest in the trenches. That's not how it used to work. It used to be get your quarterback, send him out to die. These new offenses and the way people have adapted to them have really showed the value of a running game, the value of the trenches, and it's impacted fantasy football in a huge way. We've seen running backs outperforming wide receivers recently, and teams built around running backs. When you had an unbelievable wide receiver core that should have won you the league, you had Puka, JJ, Chase, like all these guys, and the better running backs took the league this year because it was just so shifted towards the rushing attack. I find the past few years, I also find that they lowered quarterbacks' reps, the on-field contact in pad reps, much less than past generations. They don't have the timing that guys like A-Rod, Manning, Tom Brady, those guys were able to develop through hard practice reps. They're not getting nearly as much of them. They're cut nearly in half, almost compared to what they were in the late 90s and 2000s. So I think that has also had a huge effect, as we saw really tight, crisp passing plays in the early 2010s have really dropped off into the 2020s. And I don't think it's because of the level of quarterbacks necessarily. As teams continue to search for young offensive minds as their head coach, which we have seen is the new norm, and the continued defensive back shortage across football, there's been really bad CB play across the NFL this year. Much like O-line, a lot of teams are going to be looking for those 2 positions. I think we're going to see wide receivers start to come back, the passing attack start to open up as teams shift back towards drafting heavier linebackers, heavier DTs. The passing attack opens up more as teams look to stop dominant running teams like Buffalo, Detroit, Philadelphia, Seattle, all these teams that really built their offense through the run play action. That's what teams are going to be looking to stop, and I think we're going to see a shift back towards wide receivers. Running backs take a lot more hits than wide receivers. They have a lot less longevity. We've seen wide receivers produce really well in their early 30s, even mid 30s. Devontae Adams this year is a great example, and I think that building your team around young wide receivers instead of young running backs will be better for the future. For example, right now, KTC has Achane valued right around the exact same as London and JJ. I'm taking that swap any day of the week, and I love Achane. I think they're both going to give you similar fantasy production right now. I think the wide receivers will continue to boost comparatively to running backs over time as these offenses continue to shift in that direction. And I think that if you take that swap any day of the week, you build your team around young wide receivers, you get the older running backs, maybe you can get the Derrick Henrys, you can get guys like that for second, late first, whereas the cornerstone wide receivers are the ones you want to lock in now and have on your dynasty team for years to come.
I do completely agree about that take about, building around those elite wide receiver ones. I feel like that's kind of a unwritten rule in dynasty, especially if you're a rebuilding team, a contending team. It doesn't doesn't really matter. Those young elite wide receiver ones are the ones that you want to build around for sure. Although in terms of contending, we've seen recently, obviously, teams that have Saquon Barkley, teams that have Jonathan Taylor, teams that have James Cook on their team are usually winning their leagues. Even looking at comparison to a borderline top 10 guy in Cortland Sutton this year, he had like 30 or 40 less points on the season than the RB19 in Brees Hall. So you can just kind of see that right now, at least the last few years in fantasy, running backs have dominated. So I still think that you should be building around the elite wide receiver ones, but once you have like a couple of those guys in place, even one of those guys in place, we see dynasty landscape has been shifting recently, and I would not be too concerned if you want to build your flex pieces, especially around running backs.
Absolutely. I'm interested to see how the league continues to go, because we see they're mostly league winners, especially because in those games late in the year where you're fighting for playoff position, we see how important running has become in the playoffs. A lot of teams rely on those run in those important games. Those are the week 15, 16, 17 games that win people their leagues.
Especially down the stretch. Like, I feel like teams run it a lot more just because their quarterbacks, they want to keep them healthy. It's definitely something that's been shifting recently, and I feel like you should probably take advantage, in my opinion, of the running backs just being insane compared to receivers, especially in the flex. Like, I feel like if you have, for example, if your roster is like 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs, and then like 3 flex or something, I would probably go get those 2 dominant receivers and then build around running backs, like 5 running backs, like all of your flex being running backs, because we see all of these running backs are scoring a lot more than guys like those elite wide receiver ones. We saw Justin Jefferson had a bad year. Unless you had like a dominant guy like a JSN, Puka, Jamar Chase, you're probably kind of sad about how your season went right now. But if you had a guy like a James Cook, you're probably pretty happy.
Exactly. Chase the high-end talent at quarterback and wide receiver. Build the depth really at the running back position.
Hope you guys enjoyed the video. That was J&J Dynasty. Those were some takes that we're too afraid to say aloud, although we just did. And if you guys have those similar takes that you're afraid to say aloud, definitely leave them in the comments below. Like, subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Hopefully you guys really enjoy this type of content. Let us know what type of content you want to enjoy in the future from us, and we're always looking for ways to improve.